games today, we're gonna see Elise being banned away.
Yep.
I would probably expect maybe a cannon ban from EDG on blue side, unless they feel like there's some very key target picks, because of what GRAGAS is able to do in these team fights. First ban for Fnatic though does show the standard OPs if Mordekaiser and Gangplank comes in, but they do not.
Oh, they're gonna do it. All right, so they're gonna forego one of the two bans, maybe both of them here. The thing is, the reason why we haven't seen up until this point teams give away Gangplank and Mordekaiser is because then the opponent will take the Gangplank. Gangplank's actually really good into Mordekaiser because Mordekaiser has to walk through barrels, and the ultimate from Gangplank's great against him. All this AoE control is so good. See if
wow, both of them are up.
Oh.
What do Edward Gaming take?
So,
Gangplank and Mord are available.
Scobie just said right here.
I would take Gangplank for sure
Gangplank is the normal first pick.
Wow.
However, Fnatic as a team has shown a lot of picks that could do well against Gangplank, like a River. But Fnatic will get in this one. EDG really want to play around bot lane in this game.
Then who plays Gangplank on Fnatic? Has Feather been put in the time to play? Last time we saw Huni against Soaz playing that champion, it was not optimal, is the word I'm going to use. And Reignover opts into GRAGAS over Rek'Sai. What does this tell us so far?
As we said, like, you know, controlling zones and displacement and having slows is really strong against Mordekaiser. GRAGAS doesn't have to fully commit to try and control Mordekaiser.
Here's the thing though, the way you play Mordekaiser is in the early game, you have so much pressure around where the bottom lane is. You want to set up tower dives. Rek'Sai is fine for that. It's probably Clearup's best jungler overall. So he's going to be more than happy taking it if he wants to play that very aggressive style to try and push in the bottom lane, get these tower dives going. But I think also EDG, one of the reasons they take Mordekaiser is that their strategy last game of camping top lane didn't pay off.
Yeah.
Okay, it was good in the start, but they didn't win the game from it. They kind of lacked plays later on. They want to go back to playing around mid lane, or sorry, around the bottom lane. And this pick from Reckless is a very good pick into Mordekaiser when it comes to killing him in the lane.
Exactly. We've been talking to a lot of the AD carries here pretty much all worlds long about Mordekaiser and what would you like to play into him. Nobody has an answer that yes, they would love to play against Mordekaiser, but if you have to, Vayne and Kalista, top two answers so far. Obviously, because Vayne can go for that solo kill.
On a hyper carry for the first time at the World Championship.
We're seeing so many different strategies coming in for both teams. Just looking at game one with EDG, changing that focus to top side of the map, not something we have seen from them in the World Championship so far. But bottom lane, the Braum pick, normally you want double range if you want to shut down this Mordekaiser in the laning phase, set up the Vayne. Instead, they're looking for the very, very strong single target, but not the strongest 2v2 lane, in my opinion, against a Thresh Mordekaiser.
Well, also, yeah, I think it's, again, Fnatic picking for the team rather than for lane matchups here, because I'm expecting this Gangplank to go top for Huni, and they need, you know, that front line. So it's going to be Reignover plus Yellow Star with the Braum GRAGAS. So they're going to try and deny some of that damage. I expect last pick here to actually be mid laner.
With Castling being locked in though, I think Gangplank could easily go mid for February, and he takes a physical damage dealer into the Castling where he doesn't care about that shield. And also, Fiora can very easily dodge around barrels up in the top lane and get close to the Gangplank. Start trading really effectively in the early stages with him. So I think we might see February take the Gangplank to mid, and then you get a counter pick up top instead for Huni. But they can obviously change it. It's the good thing about flex picks and why they're so strong in the meta.
And if this Anivia gets locked in, by the way, everybody in Edward Gaming is a melee champion, with Thresh being the longest range on the list. So that Anivia could cause a ton of problems for the EDG roster.
Yeah, for the same reasons that Gangplank is fairly good against Mordekaiser, you know, all the AoE zone control, so is Anivia. But they decide to go for the Azir instead.
Okay. I think Kassadin is doing really well against a lot of these control mages.
Yeah, he can hop right over.
He can hop over it. He can sit early on and just try and kind of farm and sustain. He will get pushed into his tower. So we need to see if February will just sit there and try and chip it away slowly but surely and get an advantage for Fnatic. But you don't normally roam that much on an Azir. And we get now this matchup up top, which is very explosive.
Also, it's so difficult when you give away Mordekaiser because it means you can't ignore these dragons. You can't ignore bottom side. EDG are obviously going to focus very heavily on that bottom side, try and get Mordekaiser ahead, and then that transitions very easily into taking dragons. And once he gets the pet, you get so much global gold from just shoving down turrets. Outer turrets are very easy to take with them.
We're seeing basically Fnatic saying, we don't need to shut you down in the laning phase. We want a super strong team fight against you. Azir can push him away. Again, he needs to get close with the 3 hits on his Q. You have the Gangplank, who's fantastic against Mordekaiser in lane, or in team fights because of that massive zone he can create. Yeah,
the other thing is I really like the combination of Gangplank and Vayne, because Gangplank can add the ultimate, allow Vayne to take her target down. So if someone overextends in the lane, especially Mordekaiser,
gentlemen,
take him out.
Fnatic have gone for the team composition. Gangplank undefeated at Worlds. Mordekaiser undefeated at Worlds.
There can be only one!
There can be only one undefeated champion after this game. You need to let us know which it will be. It is game 2 of Fnatic versus EDG. And for the first time in 17 games, we see Mordekaiser and GP on the Rift.
And we see EDG, again, run a composition with very low wave clear. Not from the last game, but what we've seen in group stages, we've seen it back in the LPL. Look at their lineup right here. Who's going to clear the waves as they fall behind?
The thing is, they're not playing...
Yes, they're not playing to fall behind.
You're never... Okay, I stopped myself. You're never planning on falling behind, but this is a team that relies so heavily on snowballing that if you fall behind anyway, then there's not even that much point in having wave clear because you're probably not going to come back anyway. So you all in on this strategy. You have the early game. You're going to try and snowball. You're going to try and get that Mordekaiser control. Fnatic, though, they're going to go in and get those deep wards down for the lane swap.
EDG got that lead in game 1. And if it wasn't for 3 Baron power plays that netted Fnatic plus 15,000 gold, they may not have come back into that game.
I feel like that was EDG trying to adapt to, to this new world meta that they've seen and that they've experienced, playing against Origin and seeing all these teleports. That is something that experience is crucial in, and they were unable to come up in the mid and late game calls and try and make that work out.
My question is just, did you have to fully commit to this style of we cannot fall behind no matter what because we have 0 wave clear? That Kassadin could have been a more safe choice, like a Victor, offering some wave clear by still having super strong side lanes with Fiora and the Mordekaiser.
Well, fully committing to the
zoning
tween turret farming. We'll call it mid-rift.
Mid-rift. Gonna get themselves the wave. Cora's gonna be holding hands with Clear Love. And as EDG's minion wave gets to the tower, Rekkles and Yellowstar will be late to pushing that top lane. So let's see how much damage Mako and Deft can put down. Deft running with Flash Heal as opposed to Flash Exhaust that we've seen a couple other times from Mords.
So now, Fnatic knows that EDG started on the top side, or sorry, on their blue buff on the bottom lane, which means Febvin needs to be very careful with how he's standing in lane. He needs to always lean towards the top side of the map because he's going to push the wave over and over and over in these swaps, and he cannot get roamed on by Clearlove and Mako and die.
Yeah, and I'd actually expect Yellowstar to actually help out in this jungling, not doing a whole lot there, sitting in lane with Rekkles, just kind of splitting experience there. It's fine for champions to split experience with Mordekaiser because Mordekaiser will last hit the minions and gain the full experience. But Vayne definitely wants to have the solo lane to be able to try and keep up with them.
Obviously, EDG investing into the fast push, the one we've seen a lot, the old European lanes have now become the meta.
Western.
The Western, fair enough. You'll get that one as well. But for Fnatic, when you have a Vayne, normally you prefer longer lane swaps, so you can sit and farm, get some solo experience, you want to farm up to get your Cutlass or at least some lifesteal. The quick push is not always the greatest for you, but you do benefit from having 800 gold because you get that one lifesteal item compared to an average player on a standard 80 carry. Mordekaiser though is probably going to build towards the Royal Eyes as his first item, not getting any gold, giving everything over to Koro. Another change.
Yep, they give the freeze, they give the full tower gold to him. And they've dropped off the deep wards as well before they left. Now swapping Mordekaiser up top. Fnatic should be able to get this turret down in time, though.
EDG playing around Koro after he's been substituted in place of Amazing J. Huni will get the local gold to denying several minions. And that means Huni and Koro both sitting pretty. Thorn's going to get a decent trade here with Febvin, but almost every time Thorn does, Febvin looks to get some Sand Soldiers attacks back. This time, we'll take a much worse trade.
Because EDG got the early swap, though, because they got the 20 seconds advantage, this is going to mean a pretty decent freeze down there for Koro. Looks like Reckless is going to go try and answer it, though. Try and break it as quickly as possible.
So Koro knows that Fnatic is going to send that bottom lane down here. So that's why he can't stay for very long. What some top laners like to do is just push as many minions as possible right here, knowing he's going to get zoned away now anyway. Because what Fnatic can do now is they can threaten a tower dive on Koro. Once this massive wave hits the bot lane tower, Huni can teleport down and 4v1 dive him, give another tower over to Huni and give him massive gold.
Both sides can do that, though.
The problem is Huni is so far back.
Right
yeah,
now.
but Huni is ready for this one. Look how far back he's on the map.
Koro is actually
now is running.
Taking his time getting out.
Fnatic had a small opening to commit instantly, but then Koro already started running away. So both top laners are reading the situation. They don't want to risk getting killed on their own turret and don't want to be greedy for these massive minion waves here.
He's managing to stay alive. Huni's grabbed himself an early Avarice Blade. You can see Def the Mako pushing up in the top lane. And the big stack for Fnatic pushing down bottom.
So this right here is actually why I prefer the top laner to stay in lane a little bit longer before he recalls at first. So he can push a few minions and then go back to base because he's gonna get zoned anyway. He's doing nothing right now other than try and get some experience from these minions. So he's gonna be forced away. Had he stayed when the tower died, pushed in the wave, or at least looked at where Fnatic was sending Huni, once he knew he was gonna be on top side, push in the wave, then recall, you get more gold, you get more experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Now he's kind of denied himself a little bit, but Huni is obviously the same situation.
Yeah, and it does mean a lot to lane swap and deny Gangplank because Gangplank's gold income is very snowbally because of the Q and because of the extra gold that you accumulate. Enables you to earn gold quicker, keeping him off that Trinity Force for as long as possible is definitely very important for EDG. So they've stunted his growth a bit. Trying to keep up, though, with the early Avarice buy.
Yeah, and a difference here from the teams. EDG didn't manage to bounce the top wave after they killed tower, so that is slowly, very, very slowly pushing down towards Huni. And he can stay in the lane and get experience. Bottom side is very heavily pushing towards Reckless on his side. So the Mordekaiser now needs to overextend.
Up top, they're actually making a move on Huni, as you mentioned it. There are wards only for EDG here.
Huni's in so much trouble. He does not manage to flash away. He's going to get the movement speed buff. They get a little bit more burst from his passive. And here is Yellow Star. The Unbreakable is not going to be used just yet, and Yellow Star's in trouble. He's now in full retreat. They'll find the support to Feathervin, and First Blood really easily picked up by EDG.
Yeah, if you're going to commit that far out into a long lane, you have to first get your defensive vision, and Fnatic fairly slow in setting that up. Great punish there by EDG, going deep on the red side.
Great move and a mistake from Fnatic not having backup for Huni, but he can go bottom lane now and pick up this big wave anyway and get more experience and farm. Fnatic keeps sending Reckless to the lane where Koro is. It's like, we don't want the one-on-one right now because Huni is falling behind in experience. We want to keep bullying you and force your way, so you can see Koro is now farming the Gromp on his own to get something, and Huni is here getting the bump, and this time Fnatic realizes we need to have backup. Rainover shows up and then body slams randomly a minute.
Well, Death Sentence does get connected by Mako into a flay, and Deft and Mako gonna back themselves out. A lot of HP already secured there for Deft, and Reckless has farmed up to the Cutlass. Still pushing out that top wave, but gonna get risky if they continue to stick around. And Dragon number 1. Let's see what EDG can do with their very first secure.
So here's mid, where we might see a problem with the Kassadin when it comes to pushing in these towers, but a lot of damage.
That mid turret is going to die when the Dragon Ghost comes over then.
Here comes.
If they force Vivin back, I mean, he does have teleport.
They need to do it very, very quickly if they want to hold it, but I don't know if they can.
Very, very good trades though in the mid lane. It's what the Kassadin can do, especially after level 6. He can out-sustain you and keep trading. Dragon has no minions though. Just be able to deal a little bit of damage for now.
Look at the top lane, Reckless and Yellow Star. They're going to be dancing with Koro. Teleport comes out for Feathervin. And in actual fact, Reckless and Yellow, they play it safe. Yep. They back themselves out. TP, I think the threat was enough to thwart at least Deft's presence. And they're going to sacrifice the Ghost of Dragon Pass.
You get the last hit, though.
Let's take a look.
Oh! That should give a dragon buff, just to balance out Mordekaiser.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
What? Interesting concept of the show.
Hey, you killed the dragon.
Yeah. Should get a dragon's reward.
Well, it is an undead dragon, so maybe the buff is only secured from its life essence, not death essence. EDG And they group themselves up in this middle lane. Fawn moved down to the bottom. Makings of that Rod of Ages. Does have teleport available, as does Koro, as does Huni. So the only TP down is Febiven from his previous defense.
Huni is still behind in experience because he died up there. Fnatic tried to leave him in lane to get as much farm before recalling with him and catch that big wave on bot side. He just lost a little bit more for it, and Koro got a kill as well, which of course is huge in the early game.
Yeah, and again, the ramping nature of Gangplank's income here, they've really been able to set him behind. Only 81 gold off of the parlay, 131 off the Avarice, so even the Avarice doing actually more work. There have been so few minion kills by Huni, and the passive tick doing work.
And now the key thing for Fnatic is always try and get the wave pushing in the mid lane where you have Febiven sitting. You can go for the Nashos, of course, first item on his Azir, and he needs to defend this tower, because once that breaks, that opens up for EDG to start getting into the jungle of Fnatic very easily. They can do it already now, but at least Fnatic will spot them with some defensive wards. It just makes it a bit easier for EDG once the tower drops. Next dragon might be the go-to signal, because again, the siege without a dragon for EDG is horrible. It's all melee champions. I mean, they have to walk straight into the tower and start hitting it. That's not going to work.
Wow, all the siege being horrible hasn't stopped other Mordekaiser teams from picking up victories.
As long as you get the dragon.
It's the key, the crux of it.
Another key is that Huni now finally has gotten level 6. That experience soaking at the bottom turret that you're talking about definitely rewards them. You know, cross-map wave clear there every once in a while for the Gangplank ultimate. Since he's under-leveled, it's not going to do home much in the team fights, but definitely going to help out with wave control.
And we talked earlier about how Vayne as well needs to get a solo lane. Get some experience going for yourself. Get that Blade of the Ruined King. So because Fnatic had him sitting on top side, reckless that is, with no teleport, honestly, EDG could have pressured this mid tower a lot more. More deep vision coming in. You have double teleport and Def was sitting mid. Get down this tower.
Yeah, the ward placement pretty much tells everything of where they want to work off of here. Double pink wards up on top for Def. EDG going to clear one out right now, though. We are going to see the first instance of Reckless versus Deft. Vayne into Mordekaiser right now. Braum Vayne definitely can chase him down, but it's going to be about global pressure as well.
And what's so exciting, oh, a little bit of the taunt there from Koro. What's so exciting about this Def v Reckless matchup that is setting up is now second game in a row, two completely different AD carries for both players. And we need to see whether or not Reckless can still pull off Vayne. He was known for Vayne 2 years ago when he was progressing through the amateur scene, but has not been relied on to play that in at least the recent years.
He was the big carry in Fnatic 1 year ago.
Yeah.
Almost everything they did was go and build comps around Reckless, let him carry these fights. Then he joins Alliance, he tried to do the same, didn't really work out for him. Returned to Fnatic and now have Huni in the top lane, and the whole game plan is different.
Yeah, EDG really playing their game plan very well here, though. They've kept up the pressure on all the side lanes. They're trying to close the noose here now on mid lane. It's up to Fnatic to put down defensive wards, because a lot of the movement is going to be between Fnatic jungle, between the lanes here. And EDG are passing through wards ever so slightly here, so Fnatic can see and make the proper adjustments to defend.
Only thing I would like to see from EDG was just put more pressure on this mid tower and threaten a dive against Febiven. Force him to always take a very fast step back so he can't start instant clearing the waves, because that's what stops EDG from getting damage on the tower. Whenever Vayne is sitting in the side lane, she's not doing anything. She's stuck there. She's going to sit there forever and do nothing else than farm, so you have a numbers advantage in the mid lane. Go and put all that pressure on Febiven, force him away, take that mid tower.
You have to, while Mordekaiser is good at pulling off tower dives, you have to be so careful thinking about the displacement that Fnatic have. The Azir ultimate, the Gragas ultimate, and Gangplank global.
Wards, that
is really, really difficult to pull off.
They have good vision though.
And that vision may allow EDG the pressure. Ooh, that's a fisher you've been talking about. Putting some threat on this tower with 30 seconds until the dragon spawns.
And look at the difference here, how far back Febiven has to stand before he can start clearing the wave, just by EDG sending 3 guys into the mid lane. He runs all the way back behind his tower, they get a little bit of damage, a little bit of poke onto him, and they keep the pressure going, because you can see everything with these deep wards. EDG is a team, once they get the map control, they can take over the entire map and then keep it, because they have so much deep vision.
Wants to, and I'd even go further and say they have to, because remember how hard they've committed to this style. 7 seconds left on the dragon coming up. I think that they've done enough to secure this one. That vision you're talking about should enable them to take it fairly freely. And the turret in middle being so low, this might be the last thing to knock it over.
This is all they were waiting for. Chip away in mid tower, keep a bit of pressure on it, take that dragon, go and secure the tower, push Fnatic even further back. Reckless does not have a Blade of the Ruined King yet, even though he's been sitting and trying to farm these side lanes so often. And EDG really showing why Mordekaiser with his early pressure can be so deadly. Once the tower goes down, Fnatic is here to try and defend it though with 4 members.
Well, Unbreakable will block those dragon auto attacks, and the dragon is getting chunked. Death Sentence finds Reckless, but there's no follow-up, and the dragon should drop shortly. Hold up there as Koro is challenging Huni to a duel. Flash away from Huni, flash forward for Koro. The cannon barrage comes down, and Huni does stay alive. They trade ultimates and flashes, but that's a big loss for Huni.
So Koro not able to finish, trade flashes though, and Huni can still stay back, but the way Deft uses the dragon here, I really disagree. Once there's no minions, don't just rush the dragon into the tower because you're just gonna get it killed. It has enough time, you can wait for another wave, use it then to get some damage on tower while they have to clear the waves, not just suicide before dragons.
Inhumane, and it's wasteful.
We don't like it.
You're not meant to smile after that statement, Kobe.
We protect our dragons here.
Well, unfortunately, EDG do not at this stage. At this stage, rather. Deft has got himself that Riley's Crystal Scepter. A couple of key items have been picked up. 600 gold in Reckless's back pocket, getting closer to that Blade of the Ruined King. Huni as well. GP asks the one question, do I have Trinity Force?
I'm so excited for the first team fight, by the way, between these two. I want to see if Deft is going to be able to pull off a flash third bonk charge of his Q to actually be effective, because it looks fairly difficult. Let's go over the zone control. I talked about that being the #1 thing against Mordekaiser. It's ridiculous. Gangplank, 2 forms. Gragas, 2 forms. Azir, 2 forms. Braum, 2 forms as well. So it's going to be so hard for Deft to navigate, and we'll see if, if he actually can separate himself from a run-of-the-mill Mordekaiser, or if he is an expert.
The last time we saw this exact matchup was Wild Turtle against Imp. And Imp walked into the third bonk, disrespecting the melee range. So Reckless needs to be a lot more wary, knowing how Reckless has played team fights recently.
Yeah.
The theory should be Reckless. The theory.
I say, I'm looking for Mordekaiser to differentiate himself. However, it is a lot due to the team. The team's got to set him up. Mako on the Thresh. Sure. We keep highlighting Thresh, how important it is for playmaking for these guys. Mako, a lot of weight on his shoulders to come up big.
And he's not been doing a whole lot in this game, even though he's had full control of the Fnatic jungle for such a long time. We haven't really seen him commit to anything. Showed up mid once, and that was about it. But also with this Mordekaiser, it's not like his damage late game is terrible. He can still really destroy you. It's just getting to these targets that's so difficult. EDG will have, instead, though, so many members with a lot of mobility, like the Kassadin, like Fiora, that can get onto the backline of Fnatic. But the Vayne can kite and peel a lot for herself. So it's going to be so difficult for EDG in these big team fights, unless they can get a big tower advantage. And they're not doing it because February is just sitting here wave playing and they're doing nothing to pressure him away. And that slower pace of game is so different from the previous match. By about this point last game, there was 11 kills on the board and EDG had secured 8 of them. Admittedly, EDG have got 2 dragons already, which by this point last game there had been 1. So definitely prioritizing that aspect buff and using the cool that Mordekaiser can provide.
Yeah, and it's funny, this time around it's Fnatic who need to have a lot more precision in their execution to be able to pull this one off. Yes, they have a lot of tools to make this happen, but if you miss one of those very important ultimate abilities...
Miss a barrel in a big team fight.
And you get a bonk in the face.
Cannot happen for Fnatic, but for now, they have been able to just keep it somewhat close in gold due to the fact that EDG are always waiting for dragons to respawn. They want to play that 5-dragon game as well at the same time.
Not quite sure if people think that's annoying to call it bonk, but that's Mace of Spades. I'll stop that from now on. You'll know why when you hear the noise, though.
A minute and a half till the next dragon. Yellow Star was very brave and cleared out that pink ward near the mid lane river a minute or 2 ago. And there is a ward just behind that dragon pit for Fnatic with teleports available. So let's see if Fnatic decide dragon number 3 is the one they want to contest. Not give away that movement speed buff. But another half-hearted attempt to push that middle tower.
That is feeding him farm.
Well, yeah. Another reason why we are seeing so much trepidation here is because these teams are not used to getting these champions. I mean, you don't play very many games where you actually do have Mordekaiser and Gangplank both in there. And EDG actually, the slower pace here is working fairly heavily against them.
I want to see where Huni upgrades his cannon barrage. I think he's got enough Serpents for at least level 1. And also whether or not he's learned to play around those barrel mechanics slightly more effectively. It is fire at will at level 1. Something that was not what he did last time. Death's Daughter was the preferred 515 upgrade.
So it depends on what you want to do with the Gangplank. Death's Daughter is better for the one-on-one, the instant damage on one target. Fight was better for the big team fight instead, where you can hit multiple times and use it as a zone. Yeah,
exactly. And since the name of the game here for Fnatic is to control the battlefield and the zones in it, definitely a worthy upgrade there for Huni. Dragon number 3
could be your fight.
I'm so ready for this, Trevor.
Tell me what's going to happen based on where Fnatic is and their limited deep vision.
Well, I expect the fight actually to break out over wards rather than to break out over the dragon, because vision is so important for these teams, and for it to really spark with a hook landing. I mean, Pawn and Deft to go all in on somebody. You want to focus whoever. One target as quickly as possible. It doesn't even really matter who it is. If you can burn one person down and get the ghost, you actually get the 6 versus 4 that people often complain about. That's where everything turns for EDG, trying to burst that person down, grab the ghost.
And look at what Fnatic is doing around the dragon. Look at their defensive pink wards, because they know there's a double teleport with 2 assassins basically that can flank and instantly kill your AD carry or your Azir in the back. So they have very, very defensive pings to stop that flank from happening. And now the trick for Fnatic is just keep pushing mid lane. Honestly, if you keep pushing mid down to this tower, the melee champion will be spotted sitting under that tower, and you can have full vision of where EDG is going on the map, and they cannot flank due to these defensive pink wards.
I also must say an important thing for Fnatic is not to all blow their ultimates at the same time. As soon as EDG initiate, they have to be careful. Because Fnatic have so many tools, they have to be careful not to overlap all of them.
But it is a good setup for now for Fnatic. EDG obviously is going to look to try and challenge it, get in there, see if they can get some deep wards behind Fnatic, so you have that flanking option with double teleport. And it's always a fun little pre-fight over vision and control of the map before the dragon starts.
Honestly, the reason that we put so much pressure on the early game and the snowballing and the team comp that EDG have put together here, the slow pace of the game into 21 minutes here is actually fairly good for Fnatic. Huni's been even able to farm up in the top side, sort of freezing there to the Trinity Force, and does have the high impact barrels now. So that's another reason why vision around Dragon is going to be so important. If you can set up barrels in the brush, then you get the chain reactions that really turn a team fight. And you mentioned, Trevor, you know, this EDG being very melee heavy. One barrel can take out the whole squad.
Yeah, we'll see whether or not Huni can make that land. I've heard from production that there is a keyboard-related issue with Rainover, the Q key, actually, specifically. So we're getting that resolved.
Very important.
Getting that resolved right now. And then, of course, we will get back into this. So we've mentioned the zone control excessively. The setup is in place. You can see the goal difference between the respective lanes, or really lack thereof. This is a very even, very static game that could be broken wide open by this very next team fight.
Yeah, and because Fnatic has been able to defend that mid tower, even though there's been 2 dragons for EDG already.
Yeah.
And just Fib been sitting and wave playing for most of the time, except for that second dragon where the rest of the team came in. EDG, again, has just been farming. They do have a team, though, that does really well with 1 or 2 items, like the Kassadin. Often the big spike for him is get 2 items, get the fully stacked Rod of Ages, and you start having enough power to really assassinate someone. Mordekaiser as well, once that Rylai is coming in. So it's not all terrible for EDG getting these big items, but they cannot now afford to lose a fight, because then the game simply just runs away from them.
Now, game running away, EDG have got great scaling in their Kassadin and Fiora, questionable in Mordekaiser because it's so dependent on finding that third Mace of Spades. I quite like the tools that Fnatic have going forward, but it then relies entirely on the communication
execution
and not messing up, right?
Yeah.
I've just heard from our stats guy that Reckless has currently dealt, I think, 374 damage to champions. So, Tafisha, you talked about him farming those side lanes. 153 CS, Blade of the Rune King picked up, and sitting on 1,200 gold. So he's making his way towards his second item. But at what point does he become powerful enough to actually deal with Deft, who's got the Hextech Revolver and Rylai's?
Well, we hopefully should never see a Reckless alone versus Deft situation. Fnatic is going to do this as a team, but when it comes to his damage, I mean, we know the scaling of a Vayne. Blade of the Ruined King is the first important one, where he can start handling himself. And if a big team fight happens now, he can do decent damage if he gets to sit an auto attack.
Also, I have to say, the thing you need to keep track of is levels. Don't forget about the passive here from Mordekaiser. He's got 2 levels up on Reckless. Yes, the items are going to be fairly similar with the amount of gold he's been able to collect as he goes back to purchase next, but the extra levels there for Deft, definitely adding a lot of stats.
And we can also see EDG later on in the game start using the fact you have Kassadin and Fiora, both of them with teleport. They are in the side lanes. You can even set them in the same lane and go 2v1 against Huni. Like, jump in. You have the mobility to do it. Because Febiven is the wave play with the teleport. He's the guy sitting mid lane for Fnatic all the time. So he cannot respond to the side lane pressure of double TP. There's a lot of ways EDG can play that out, either split push the whole thing or jump up to each other.
Just to explain to the guys in-house, the players did unpause the game to test whether or not Reignover could cast Q. For obvious reasons, the test did fail, I'm afraid. So the guys are busy triaging the problem. We need to get that spell once again resolved. We will continue to troubleshoot that. We've broken down some of the mechanics here, individual plays, the team fights. Where do these teams now sit in terms of communication, right? Because this Dragon fight is impending. Fnatic actually backed away just before the pause came in. They set up, they siege middle, they peeled back. Fisher, you've touched on the defensive wards, and Fnatic are now on their line of defensive wards.
They've had a good 10 minutes to set up how they want to execute this next team fight. So both teams should be very ready. It looks like, EDG have moved in. They have to clear out some Fnatic vision before they set themselves up, though.
And that is the key thing for EDG and why they're moving back in. February needs to keep pushing mid over and over and over. But you also have to be careful when it comes to recalling close to a dragon. If you do sit on 15, 1600 gold, you really want to go back to base. You want to spend it all, but you can't because instant dragon is going to be started then, and that's what's going to cost it. Fnatic, if they give up another dragon to EDG, not only is it going to be 3 dragons for 0, that dragon should matter when it comes to taking down that mid tower.
So let's talk dragon mechanics. 1 and 2 were not good. We've seen Mordekaiser 4 other times at the tournament.
Right.
Martin, you are the dragon aficionado.
Freak.
No, you were real excited about it the last time.
So I used to hate that dragon. But now I'm starting to loving it a little bit more, just a little bit. But I think the way Deft is playing with it is really wrong, because what he's doing all the time is he's going in, he sends it straight into the tower with no minions, and Fnatic just sits there and hits it and just kills it. And because it's 3 melee champions, or even 5 maybe, 4 of them, sorry, Thresh can hit from range, EDG can't follow. The dragon is not enough for them to go in and hit the tower. So they just send in and kill it. They don't use the minion waves at all, and that's a big mistake.
My question is, are they going to let him retake this test? Is it graded on a curve? Come on. They need some help. Looks like we're going to have to send it over to the analyst desk, though.
That we are. Unfortunately, guys, we will head to the analyst desk. I will keep you entertained and informed while we resolve the problem.
That we will. Thank you very much, QuickShot. There is seemingly an issue with Reignover's Q on GRAGAS. Now, there is the proposed situation, which there's a known bug with GRAGAS where you can't use your Q until you die. Yeah. So right now, we have officials discussing what will happen, whether or not it is an issue with the keyboard or the game itself. In the meantime, gives us some time to discuss. Drastically different strategy here by EDG with abandoning the triple TP. They still have the Fiora on the top lane, but a Kassadin, a Mordekaiser, and a very interesting, and that was all initiated by Fnatic, leaving Mordekaiser and GP up in the picks and bans phase.
And that's really brave, because one thing that we learnt about EDG in the finals, actually, is that Pawn's Pirate is, like, really good. Like, his Gangplank is really feared in the LPL, and he was playing at mid lane a lot and was getting really good success rates with it, like farming up an absolute monster. And because Clearlove is more of a go into the enemy jungle, Pawn would, like, clear mid wave, go to Wolves, clear mid wave, go to Wraith. He was getting, like, 70 CS.
In homage to the French crowd with the wave. Nice to see the audience taking it all with a grain of salt and keeping a good attitude. As we are in the pause. Continue your point, though.
Yeah, so I was really surprised they went with Mordekaiser, and what surprised me even further is how slowly they've played this game. Like, they are slow playing, and all melee comp against Azir. This is very dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. They have a lot of scaling, though, right? You have Mordekaiser, who does a lot of damage, but you have Kassadin, who will be a large backline threat to the Azir and the Vayne later on. And these are all squishies, right? Everybody that you go after on the side of Fnatic is going to be a prime target for Kassadin. They don't have a lot of wave clear here. You're kind of relying on the Mordekaiser. It might turn out to be a problem for them, but they can just stall out for 5 dragons. That's really the win condition here from EDG, is get skirmishes when you're hitting power spikes and get your dragons, and then at that point, Fnatic won't have a response.
It's like the first thought that comes to mind is obviously you pick 4 melee champions into this composition that just loves situations when you run into them. You have Vayne, Azir, Gangplank. Obviously, on paper it looks bad, but what we need to highlight is the fact that EDG have stronger matchups everywhere, on bottom, on mid, on top, and of course the Drake situation that we spoke about, but I feel they need to pick up the pace. They're playing way too slow, and I feel like Fnatic eventually is going to be in a position where they are stronger than them in a team fight. And
there's one strategy that was really popular in the LPL that I feel we have to talk about just because of the Mordekaiser, and like you used to see it in like Season 1, and that is Kassadin has, with Athenes, has a mana reset on his W and Athenes. So he sits in a brush and just spams his ultimate, right? Until he like has all these stacks. Def flash ults the Vayne. Pawn just runs out of the brush and one-shots a Vayne, and then they win the team fight off that. It's very, very cheesy, and you used to see it a lot with DFG Mordekaisers. I know you're a big fan of it. But if you're able to get that AD carry, things like Baron, things like turrets actually become really easy to take. So we'll see if they're able to execute on a team fight, because I feel like unless they get like the dream play, the kite back is so good on Fnatic's lineup right now.
Yeah, that's the thing, is as soon as a Rylai's Crystal Scepter comes out for Febivin, you're not really going to be able to get to him as a Mordekaiser. If he's playing it perfectly, you're never going to even get close. You're going to blow your flash. Still, Febivin has ways to disengage you. So it's just that one key moment that Deft is looking for where he gets to bop a primary target. And like I said before, nobody's really tanky here. Like, even if you hit the Gangplank, you might just one-shot him. You might one-shot the Azir or the Vayne. So all of these people are very easy to take down if the Mordekaiser closes the gap. That's just the question that we had to bring up, though. Can he do it?
Yeah. Well, so the theme here seems to be time, right? It's about how much time does EDG have to close out this game, or rather to get to that 5-dragon mark without Fnatic getting to a point where they can wave clear efficiently, or even then turn the tides and siege themselves onto EDG.
And I feel like there's actually a really cool strat that EDG can use here. It's now like 23 minutes into the game. Like, it's time for the Dragon versus Baron showdown. Just go get the next Dragon, march it through mid lane, like completely show your hand, right? Make it the most obvious Baron in the world. Tank Baron up with a Dragon and just make Fnatic come to you, because if they don't make a move within like the next 5 minutes, we will get to that point of the game.
It's just like, with this play in mind, I feel it's like the composition that Fnatic has drafted. It's also like with the GP ult and the Azir going over the wall. I can imagine it's very hard for EDG to do the Baron, because they don't have like the quickest.
Oh, they shouldn't commit to it. Like after Fnatic comes to you, get like, the heck out of the
forcing the fight. That I like it too. I like that. Forcing the fight. That's something they need to do. Because something that I want to talk about as well is like the Kassadin, because I've been hyping Kassadin all the time. We saw it yesterday as well, but Faker kind of died a lot of times in lane, sure, but I don't think that's relevant to my Kassadin point. I really like the confidence.
I love that you called yourself out on it, so that's great.
But then he deflected it for himself. It's not relevant.
Come on. Kassadin, of course. I like the fact that Pawn is brave enough to blind pick it against a player like Febivin, because Febivin has been criticized for a small champion pool. In this tournament, it hasn't been noticed because how the bans are structured. Nobody's targeting the Victor bans, the other bans. But Kassadin is really good against all those champions, like against the Victor, against the Azir. And the buff on Kassadin was immense. So he can start doing exactly as you said, just charging up in the bush and just one-shotting people.
And Pawn's 15-0 LPL.
Yeah, the funny thing, too, is you can also do that in the fountain with Home Guard and TP. And then you have full mana for the
We
fight.
are so cheesy. We are the cheesiest.
That's the thing, is Pawn strikes me as a cheeser.
Rank 5s, here we come. We're going to play Mordekaiser with a Home Guard TP Kassadin, one-shot the enemy ADC.
You'll be flying, man.
Oh my God.
I do want to talk, though, because we had a rather lively discussion about how exactly Kassadin fits into this composition. Because EDG has locked themselves into a 5 melee comp, it is making it very hard for them to siege. Would it not have been beneficial for them to, say, for example, pick up the Azir, which was the discussion we're having, in place of the Kassadin, if only to enable a little bit more siege?
It would have allowed them to take turrets. It would have been a different direction to kind of take the composition, because otherwise this is more, we can have these spread out skirmishes instead of team fights, right? Like they they have the split push going for them, right? Koro has priority in the top lane over Huni at the moment, and he's continuing to just get little chunks off of turrets, and it's hard to get some pressure there. But then if you start a skirmish on the other side of the map, you're in a good spot. So Azir would have been a completely different take, and there's more counter picks to it that you can run into it, because it would have been blind.
Yeah, and as I was going to say in the pregame, there's kind of this arrogance about LPL teams, and that is the fact that if they're even or ahead, they feel they're a better team, and then they shrug off victories like defeats like it's nothing. It's really weird when you watch them play, and EDG would have been like, we have a one-shot comp. We're not going to diversify it. We're not going to do anything. They're very tunnel-minded on how they want to play the game, and, you know, it's good because it makes these bloody games and they, like, run at each other a lot, but it also does have very significant weaknesses, like LGD's stubbornness of not banning Mod. I would say that's, once again, they would be like, we've played it in scrims, we're better than Mordekaiser, we're just going to leave it up. And they got completely crushed by it 2 games in a row. Like, EDG, to me, have kind of done a similar thing here, where they're just, like, confident in their own gameplay, and it's probably going to bite them if the game goes for another 10 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I want to, like, speak a bit more about the Azir in particular, because sure, it might not fit into EDG's idea. It's just the fact that it's just so hard for them to play their composition against Azir.
Yep.
We see them struggle, sieging in the mid simply because Azir can stand there and just relax, kill the mini wave, and also PU for the Vayne.
I just want to throw out an update. We're still troubleshooting the issue on stage. No ETA as of yet, but we'll keep you informed as it comes. Again, gentlemen, so to your point about, you know, basically it would have created 2 different style of compositions. It kind of ties in with what you were saying in the pregame, which is that EDG is a team that is going to force you into decisions. Yeah. We're going to force you to make a decision about how we're dealing with dragons, because we're going to get to 5 unless you proactively stop us.
And the crazy thing is that Fnatic's Game 1 comp was a very, like, all-in, like, 5 people stack on top of each other comp, which EDG are normally comfortable playing in, and they didn't pick that kind of comp. So this time, EDG went, well, we're going to pick an all-in, like, stand on top of each other 5-man comp. And Fnatic's done the opposite and said, we're going to play the disengaged kind of pokey comp. So, like, they've actually completely swapped roles in this series so far. Shows the diversity of both teams. And the fact that they can both execute it up to a 23-minute mark is, once again, just fantastic League of Legends.
It's completely different than their tendencies as well throughout this entire tournament. Like I said previously, EDG has the most assists per kill, which is indicative of a team fight team. They're running skirmishes. And then the exact opposite is Fnatic. Their second least assists per kill out of all teams in the tournament. The only one that's ahead of them is AHQ, right? So this is Fnatic, who usually runs skirmishes, running team fight. And this is just showing that they have those different hats. They have that versatility, which you need to have as a team. We've seen all throughout Worlds, people, NA, RIP, having one strategy that does not work out because people learn it. And this is great because when you throw out different strategies and you have these different things, you throw pick bans off. And in the state the pick ban is right now, you can only get to throw off one strategy.
I want to take us back to the beginning of the game. We're hammering a lot on the compositions, but now I want to look at the way it was played out a little bit, because we had some criticisms about the Chinese team's ability to deal with the lane swaps. This time around, they seem to be a lot more comfortable with the way that the lane swaps are working out.
I think that it was, like, in terms of European lane swap, that what people like to call it, I don't like to call it that.
Didn't start in Europe.
No. Yeah, I know, exactly. You know, like, lane swaps to me is like chemistry, right? It's the same everywhere, but it's just a thing about reactions to what people do. Just like chemistry, when you mix different things. Yeah, you got it.
This is beautiful.
You guys are looking like question marks and telling you.
Tell me the story.
Keep going, man. Talk to me.
In that case, it was played like perfectly. You know, like the top lane is coming into the wave that is coming in, and the bot lane is going to the wave that is coming out. That is lane swaps. I like it.
I think actually Fnatic was a team that made the first error in the lane swap, because what happened is Koro burnt Huni's ultimate and summoner spell, and then they felt like they couldn't control dragons, so they actually sent their bottom lane back top lane, and they kind of started the situation we're in. Whereas if they had have sent the Vayne down, it was only a 1-level difference at that point for some reason. Normally you're 4.5 to 6, and that's when you get the dragon as Mordekaiser. Reckless had reached level 5. I honestly felt they could nearly have contested Dragon 1. And if they had have got the first Dragon by a stroke of luck with the GP ultimate and then the Vayne being able to kite out very well, this game would have been like, EDG would have nearly had to roll over from that point. You drop a Dragon with this composition, you are in very big trouble.
I feel like in that particular scenario, like Mordekaiser kind of causes this very strange scenario. Like in this case, like in lane swap, usually you send your bottom lane top lane because that is the way that it's coming out, as I just explained. But with the Mordekaiser in the mix, it kind of changes your priorities in a way. Yeah, I think you have to give up those creeps, as you said, for the Gangplank to just make sure your bottom lane goes down bottom to just contest that dragon, because I completely agree with you.
I also feel Gangplank ult is just so important in this matchup.
Hugely impactful spell.
Gangplank just as a champion, right? He's farming, he's getting extra gold.
Also that,
farming,
hugely impactful champion.
And while he's farming, he's getting assists across the map. But we haven't seen a lot of fighting in this game just yet. It's all of that just stalling out. And like we said before, it's time. And also another thing, like, because I'm a jungler and I was watching Reignover during the lane swap, he's taking some CS there. Like, he's 18 CS after. I'm sitting there, I'm like, those aren't jungle creeps.
Right. We were looking at the difference between Reckless and Deft was pretty large for being, you know,
it was 20 to 28, 5 minutes into the game. Wise is huge.
Yeah. I do want to look at the junglers, though, because it was another thing that we brought up. We brought up earlier in the day and before this game, the Reignover and Clearlove matchup. Game 1, Clearlove got the better of him 100%, was running him around. You know, this time, given the lane swap, they haven't had a ton of interaction with each other, but how do we feel Reignover is stepping up or not in this game?
It's kind of funny because the lane swap, in a way, hid Reignover and Huni from Clearlove and Koro, because in the last game at 16 minutes, there were 8 deaths for Fnatic. 7 of them were Huni and Reignover. They were getting smashed in the top lane, and Reignover just, he seemed a little off. He wasn't watching his tremor sense in the previous game. This game, you know, aside from the bug happening, which is not his fault at all, he has been kind of just playing around the map, not to the best of the degree, because EDG is actually controlling vision. EDG is actually, I think, they are the second best warding team out of the teams here. KT is the one that's above them currently, but EDG is just having immense vision control, which they can't really seem to keep up with on Fnatic here, and I feel like Koro's also contributing to that, which is another thing, is that everybody on EDG is stepping up with that.
The thing is, like, with Reignover in this particular case, there's not much he can do, because we've highlighted the fact that EDG has the stronger matchups, both in the split push, in the 1-3-1, which EDG is trying to pressure to gain access. The fact that Reignover is farming and keeping up in levels, that is the important thing, because I feel in the current state, I feel like Fnatic is winning simply because EDG is not pushing their advantages enough. I want to see the 1-3-1 go into the enemy jungle and deny Reignover's farm completely.
I completely agree, and the other thing you have to take into consideration is the lane to gank is a duo lane right now, because it's very hard to gank Fiora and it's almost impossible to gank a pushing mid laner in the fact that Forbidden is pushing into pawn a lot of the time. And you do not want to Gragas gank Mordekaiser. It's very easy to prep the Q with Mordekaiser, and as he flies into you, just completely destroy the Gragas. I actually give credit to Reignover here, because I thought he would tunnel vision on Rek'Sai to the point that they would prioritize it over Gragas. And I feel that EDG wanted Gragas in this composition, because with the mid lane turret still up, it is so easy as Gragas to sneak around the side, chuck your ultimate out and give an alley-oop to the Kassadin Mordekaiser. And Reignover had enough courage, I guess, in this matchup to not prioritize his better champion and take the Gragas for the team.
And here's the thing as well, when you look at that, between that, Rek'Sai versus Gragas, Gragas brings way more disengage to the fight. And if you want to set up a 1-3-1, Fiora split push, Kassadin split push, you need a disengager in the 3-person, and they don't have that currently. So that might throw off the 1-3-1, because right now, who's going to contest Kassadin in the split push lane? Right? There's nobody on this team who can do it. You don't send Azir to go deal with it. So.
Who's going to contest a Fiora?
Yeah.
Gameplay's just going to get done.
You have 2 major threats.
Many things left unanswered. Now, as we continue to investigate the issue on stage, let's hear what Forbidden thinks of his lane opponent, Pawn.
He was extremely good, but I think I was pretty bad back then, and I improved so much. And what he's good at is playing for his team. He can basically play whatever. His laning phase is really solid. He plays most of the champions. He plays really good for his team. He roams a lot. He sacrifices himself for the team. And that's what he's good at.
We have some statistics here, just so we can continue to facilitate conversation. Forbidden was up 30 CS at 10 and 39 CS at 20 minutes in Game 1 as Victor versus Twisted Fate, and was 36% of the team's damage, going 5-1 and 10.
Yeah, I think Forbidden's been having an amazing tournament and showing that this rookie does have a ton to show. He's had so much potential since he first got on the Rift and we saw him in Challenger, and now making it to the place where he could go from quarters to semifinals and top 4 team in the world. just a big leap, and you can show that he's living up to his potential.
Yeah, I want to talk about another rookie, the guy that he completely crushed in lane when they played Invictus Gaming, right? And this is a person that is heralded as the next Faker when he was coming out of Korea, and one of the better laners in the LPL, which has some good mid laners. And Forbiven did an absolutely marvelous job. As soon as he did that, because I saw a lot of Forbiven, but you always question regional performances, just like people will now question the Chinese regional performance, because of the MSI performance he had. But I completely agree with him. He is night and day, so much better after MSI. Probably the steepest increase in a player that I have nearly ever seen on the world stage.
I'm happy also that he recognizes the fact, because there was so much hype around Forbiven simply because he killed Faker at MSI, but in my opinion, his performance at MSI was okay, it was decent, it was good, but comparing that to now, there's such a big difference. That hype he had around him back then when he killed Faker should be around him now, because I remember the particular matchup, EDG versus Fnatic. Yeah. Pawn was destroying Forbiven with a bad matchup. He was playing LeBlanc into Zed, and Zed is considered a stronger part in this matchup, and he was getting smacked.
Yeah, and I think a big thing about watching these two guys is also when, sorry, my brain just farted. What just happened?
That's all right. We'll talk about something else, because I got...
Anyway, sorry. So when you watch Forbiven in the mid lane, and he said that he's gotten better over time, it's not just domestic performances that you have to watch, it's also international performances. Because we see people have great domestic performances, but they can't transition to the international stage. Their nerves get to them. But Forbiven has been rock solid there in the mid lane. His CS has been going up, his differentials have been amazing, and his ability to kill you in lane is something that you can never underestimate against this guy. He is always very present in his games.
And another thing that you have to really give credit to, because of how much pressure gets put on top lane for Fnatic, and then because of the fact that Yellowstar and Reckless, at the moment at least, because of the cannon, are playing very much in tandem for the first part of the game, how hard it is to get these CS differentials in mid lane against other teams that like to play mid lane centric comps, and EDG can flex and do that. So being able to have these dominant performances in mid lane is just, once again, it's really impressive because of the way Fnatic play the game.
He's like a god version of Paul Belter. Doesn't get the resources, but still wins mid lane. I think
100% agree.
Marvelous play.
However, in this tournament, he has actually gotten the second highest gold share on his team. Traditionally, coming into the tournament, we were looking at EU mid laners as having the lowest percentage of their team's gold, so that is indicative of the region generally starving their mid laners. Somehow he has scraped together a little bit more gold in this tournament.
He's continued to play Azir Victor. In that case, I will actually say that stat is lying a little bit, because we've seen a lot of Kassadin and champions like this that don't necessarily get that. The wave clear mid laners that Forbiven has continued to play and play well do generally get a higher share of gold than, say, the Fizzes, the Dianas, and the Kassadins that we've been seeing a lot.
And it also speaks to what the European meta kind of evolved into. Like, all mid laners were complaining with the fact that mid lane was just an island that nothing happened on, where you just farmed, and everything was impacted by the bot lane and mid lane, where you transitioned the vision in that area into mids. And I feel like that speaks a lot to how Forbiven plays in his playstyle.
I want to get back to the game state that we saw when we left, which was that Dragon up. We're looking at the next Dragon fight. I want to figure out how Fnatic defends or takes a Baron for themselves. Because to me, it seems, with a Gangplank and Azir, you want to be the team that gets there first in this scenario and be entirely set up. But while Fiora is pushing a Gangplank into a second-tier turret, it seems nearly impossible for them to actually properly set up for the team fight that they will win at Dragon.
Yeah, currently, the lines that they have for wards are actually in their own jungle, going across blue and red in a diagonal. They have a ton of pink wards on Fnatic's own side. So what they need to do is push their ward lines forward, get there first. Of course, you might have to sack a dragon for it, because you see EDG really want to go for dragons here. That's the thing, is you could trade dragon for Baron. You have Azir, you have Vayne, you have Gangplank, you have so much damage that you can deal to this. You're going to take it rather quickly. You would have to get proper vision of the area, though. That's just the big thing, is EDG will not let you do that so easily.
So the thing that EDG did really well, if you go back and watch this game, is they actually transitioned their wards to the top red side of the jungle very well. They had red buff warded in one and the ward going up to the turret as well. And what that meant is that Huni was really hesitant to go slow push the wave, and he actually got beaten there. And they actually lost this dragon fight, in my opinion, the way it is going to play out a minute and a half ago, because they didn't get Scuttle Crab. Like, Scuttle Crab is so important for Mordekaiser teams. As soon as you secure Scuttle Crab with Mordekaiser, he hides around the corner, he takes one step onto the crab, flashes, and he's got this big movement speed bonus with his shield. So if they had have been able to get there early, this is a fight they should have been able to contest, because they have the first upgrade from Gangplank, but it just didn't work out that way because they weren't there quick enough.
I feel like Fnatic is actually in a dominating position. I feel like EDG are playing slow enough.
Yep.
Kassadin was freezing the bot lane for some time, and I feel like Fnatic can just wait for the 4th dragon and do the fight right there.
All right, well, while we work out the issues on stage, we're going to take the opportunity to check out a few of your answers to our question of the day. To remind everyone, earlier we asked which player or lane will have the biggest impact today and why. Jack Adams says Yellow Star is going to have the most impact. His calls and plays are unstoppable.
Can't milk those. His Alistar were really good game 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked
Really
about how
good.
to deal with the triple and the triple TPs, and it was the decisive calls to make those aggressive team fights that put you in a in a global comp in a tough decision.
It's like how we describe Yellowstar back in Europe is that the good supports like Mithy, Vander, and Casting, they take 98% of the chance that they get, but Yellowstar is a person that creates his own opportunities. He kind of finds the engages that nobody kind of sees. And in this particular game, the first of the set, we saw that Yellowstar was kind of a genius in that way.
And next up, Even Horn says the bot lane for both teams, neither Reckless nor Deft, will give the other any room to play. Hashtag friendship goals.
No room to play.
Is that friendship goals or?
I mean, you're actually making each other better players if you're actually just keeping each other honest. So that was one of the things too. When I saw the Jace AD carry come out, I was like, Reckless is sitting there in this game going, he never said that in the Skype group. It just feels betrayed. Where are the secret strats?
This is one thing that I'm really interested in, just because of like the diversity between the AD carries. Like you look at Reckless and he plays very utility focused, which is why I'm super happy that he's on Vayne, because I don't think that's how he has to play. I think that he can play other styles. He just likes to play that way for his team because of Huni. Whereas you see Def's like even damage in game 1. Like this guy is just like, he will eke every single piece of damage out of his champion. And it's just completely different. Like one wants to be that big damage threat in team fights, and one just wants his team to win. Like they're both going for the same goals, but they do it in very different favors. And that's why I actually give a lot of respect to both AD carries. I think that they're almost getting to the point where you don't necessarily compare them as like EU Def versus Deft anymore, because they have diversified a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I want to talk then, since we're on the topic of AD carries and we have Mordekaiser versus Vayne here, a lot of people don't have too much information on if this was a 2v2 matchup, how specifically those AD carries interact. So when you have a Mordekaiser on one side, is Vayne the proper pick, or they chose the lane swap, so I'm assuming isn't the best 2v2 anyway?
I think the first thought that comes to mind is Vayne has issues in the early game against things that push hard. And I think Vayne in this particular matchup would just sit under her tower and Mordekaiser would have priority on almost any objective in the area. So in that regard, I feel it is kind of a dangerous pick. But then again, in the mid game into late game, she is very mobile, doesn't need to itemize the crit. She just itemizes the attack speed and movement speed, and I think in that regard, it kind of works out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I also think it's very support-centric, right? If you're able to get something that can trim the wave, you don't necessarily have to play a lane swap situation. However, they didn't go with that. I think that we're going to see a lot. If Mordekaiser keeps getting through, we'll see a lot of Kalista or a lot of Vayne. Same reason, very good kite back at AD carries. Both do a lot of damage to the person in front of them. The Hurricane build seems to be popular because of the wave clear in the matchup, but I would like to see people adapt Bang's build where he goes very single target focus with something like a Static Shiv in there, because if you put a lot of spears into the Mordekaiser, all of a sudden he is very scared to try and continue this fight. And I think that is something that they can definitely take advantage of.
Yeah, I definitely think, echoing both of your sentiments here, very support-centric in the matchups, but you don't want to run a low-mobility AD carry into Mordekaiser, because as soon as he gets a Rylai's Crystal Scepter, you're never getting away from him, and he's just going to bonk you 3 times and kill you. So definitely think about the support you want to take, and you also have to consider the Mordekaiser support. Does he have a Zillion? Does he even have like a Lulu or a Blitzcrank, right? Something that's going to enable him to get to you or bring you to him.
Now, we have mentioned that EDG's primary win condition is the 5 dragons, but I want to return to the topic of engage, because as it stands, they have very little, if any, engage. Their most reliable source of engage is either a Rek'Sai tunnel or a Thresh hook.
Home guard Kassadin.
It's like,
and or home guard Kassadin.
While their win condition is very obvious, as we stated, 5 dragons, I feel like their hidden win condition to kind of get the pressure to get those dragons is you making use of the Kassadin with teleport, the 1-3-1, keep applying pressure on the sideways, because that forces the enemy team to split up. They don't need to group up.
All right, well, because of the game-altering bug that prevented Reignover from casting Gragas' Q, the game will undergo a full remake with new picks and bans. Now, to allow the teams Time to strategize and regroup. We will be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. The World's quarterfinals will continue right after this.